The night air in Las Vegas is hot, dry, carries the scent of exhaust fumes and cheap perfume. It's just past 11 p.m. September 7th, 1996. The Strip is a river of neon, a symphony of slots and laughter. A black BMW sedan glides through the traffic. Inside, the bass from a stereo is a physical thing, a vibration in the chest. The car smells of high-grade cannabis and expensive cologne. In the passenger seat, Marion Suge Knight, the formidable CEO of Death Row Records, a mountain of a man. Behind him, in the back, sits Tupac Shakur. He's hyped, energized. He's just witnessed Mike Tyson deliver a devastating first-round knockout at the MGM Grand. The energy of the fight, of the altercation in the lobby afterward, still courses through him. He leans forward, the diamond in his ear glittering under the passing streetlights. He's talking, laughing. The car pauses at a red light on Flamingo Road, near the intersection with Koval Lane. For a moment, it's just another car in the Vegas night. Then, a woman leans out of a white four-door Cadillac. She's smiling. The scene is almost peaceful. Tupac smiles back. The moment shatters. The rear passenger window of the Cadillac rolls down. Not slowly. A violent, mechanical jerk. The muzzle of a pistol emerges. There is no shout, no warning. Just the sudden, terrifying void of silence before the storm. The first shot is impossibly loud. A crack that tears the night in two. It's followed by a rapid staccato burst. Pop, 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 pop. Glass explodes inward. The BMW's windows spiderweb, then disintegrate into 1,000 crystalline shards. The sound of the gunfire echoes off the concrete and glass of the surrounding hotels, a brutal percussion to the city's nightly melody. Inside the car, it's chaos. The world narrows to the smell of cordite, sharp and acrid, and the coppery scent of fear. Tupac moves, instinct taking over. He turns, tries to shield himself, to find cover where there is none. Suge Knight, grazed by fragmentation, stomps on the accelerator. The BMW lurches forward, tires screaming against asphalt, a wounded animal trying to flee. But the damage is done. 4 rounds find their mark. Tupac slumps back into the leather seat. The initial adrenaline fades, replaced by a searing, white-hot pain. He's hit in the chest, the pelvis. The world begins to blur at the edges, the neon lights outside smearing into long, indistinct streaks of color. The sound of the engine, the squeal of tires, the frantic shouting. It all starts to fade, replaced by a dull, ringing silence. He is bleeding. Badly. The white Cadillac melts into the traffic, a ghost vanishing into the neon-lit night. It leaves behind only the ringing in the ears, the smell of gun smoke, and a question that would hang in the desert air for decades. Who did this? And why? To understand the weight of that moment, you have to understand the man in the back seat. Tupac Amaru Shakur, not just a rapper, a poet, a prophet, a revolutionary figure born into the struggle. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was a prominent Black Panther. He was baptized in the language of resistance before he could walk. His art was a reflection of his life. Brutally honest, fiercely intelligent, and crackling with a raw, untamable energy. He didn't just perform his lyrics, he bled them. He was a symbol of a generation's anger, its hope, its frustration. He was a king, but his throne was built on a powder keg. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry was more than just music. It was a cultural war, and Tupac, signed to Suge Knight's West Coast powerhouse death row records, was its most volatile general. He had survived a previous shooting, an ambush in the lobby of a New York recording studio in 1994. He had accused Sean Puffy Combs and the Notorious B.I.G. of being involved. The beef was public, vicious, and very, very real. Every lyric was a shot fired, every interview a battle line. Las Vegas was supposed to be a respite, a night at the fight. But for Tupac, there was no escape from the war he was at the center of. The target on his back was as large as his legend. The BMW, its windows blown out, weaves erratically down the strip, a ghost ship on a river of light. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with panic. Suge Knight's voice is a low, urgent rumble, trying to keep his passenger conscious. Tupac's breathing is ragged, a wet, hitchling sound. "I can't breathe, Suge," he rasps. The leather seat beneath him is slick, dark, and warm. The gaudy neon from the casinos outside strobes through the shattered windows, illuminating his face in flashes. A grimace of pain, a moment of eerie calm, then pain again. They are not headed to a hospital. In the paranoid, insular world of death row, trust is a currency rarer than diamonds. They are speeding toward the University Medical Center, but every second is an eternity, every red light a potential death sentence. They arrive in a storm of chaos. Orderlies rush out. The transition from the car's dark, metallic interior to the harsh, sterile fluorescence of the emergency room is jarring. The smell of antiseptic fails to mask the iron-rich scent of blood. Tupac is rushed into surgery. The bullets have done catastrophic damage. One has punctured a lung. The world outside the hospital walls holds its breath. News vans descend, their satellite dishes sprouting like metallic mushrooms. Fans gather, their faces etched with a mixture of grief and disbelief. They hold candles that flicker weakly against the vast Nevada night, their flames mirroring the fragile life hanging in the balance inside. For 6 days, Tupac Shakur fights. He undergoes multiple surgeries. Doctors remove his right lung in a desperate attempt to stop the internal bleeding. The reports from inside are cryptic, controlled by death row's formidable PR machine. He's stable. He's resting. But the truth is far more grim. The damage is too extensive. The body, even one as resilient as Tupac's, has its limits. On Friday, September 13th, 1996, at 4:03 p.m., the fight ends. The breathing machine is silenced. The frantic beeping of monitors ceases. The official cause of death is respiratory failure and cardiopulmonary arrest. The news ripples out from Las Vegas, a shockwave of grief and anger that engulfs the world. Radio stations break from their programming. MTV airs marathon music videos. In cities across America, impromptu vigils turn into eruptions of raw emotion. Tupac Shakur, the voice of a generation, is gone. He was 25 years old. The investigation begins almost as an afterthought. Las Vegas Metro Police are overwhelmed. The crime scene was a moving vehicle. Evidence was contaminated. Loss of the wind on Flamingo Road. The only description of the shooters, African-American males in a white Cadillac. It is a needle in a haystack the size of the desert. The silence from the hip-hop community is deafening. The code of the streets, stop snitching, is a wall no detective can breach. Witnesses from the Tyson fight, from the altercation that preceded the shooting, clammed up. Fear is a more powerful force than justice. Fear of Suge Knight's reputation. Fear of the shadowy figures who gave the order. Fear of becoming the next target. The case grows cold, frozen in a permafrost of intimidation and unanswered questions. The white Cadillac is never found. The murder weapon is never recovered. No viable suspects are ever named. The LVMPD file remains open, a monument to failure. For the public, the lack of answers is a festering wound. How could the most famous rapper in the world be executed on a busy street in America's most surveilled city, and yet no one saw a thing? The vacuum of facts is a fertile ground for speculation, and from that speculation, a more audacious, more unsettling theory begins to take root. What if the entire thing was staged? What if Tupac Shakur is still alive? The official story was a dead end, a cold case file gathering dust. But nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human mind. In the absence of facts, speculation blooms like a strange, tenacious weed. The first whispers started online in the nascent chat rooms and forums of the late 1990s. They were quiet, conspiratorial murmurs. Then they grew louder. The theories began with the crime itself. How could there be no clear security footage from the countless casinos on that stretch of road? Why were there no credible eyewitnesses to the actual shooting on a crowded Vegas street? The lack of evidence started to feel less like an investigative failure and more like a deliberate erasure. Then, the analysts turned to Tupac's own work. They rewatched his music videos with a newfound paranoid scrutiny. In I Ain't Mad at Cha, released just days after his death, he plays a man shot and killed, ascending to heaven in a white suit. The parallels were chilling. Was it a morbid coincidence or a carefully crafted piece of foreshadowing? They dissected his lyrics line by line. On the Don Killuminati, The 7-Day Theory, an album released under the new alias Machiavelli, just 2 months after his death, his words seemed to echo from beyond the grave. The album was drenched in imagery of death, resurrection, and betrayal. The title itself referenced Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance philosopher who famously proposed faking one's death to defeat one's enemies. The most cited piece of evidence became the album's cover art. Tupac crucified on a cross. Fans pointed to the exact number of gunshot wounds depicted. They analyzed the spelling of Killuminati, searching for hidden codes. The album felt less like a posthumous release and more like a message. A blueprint. The fact that he had recorded a staggering volume of music before his death, enough for years of posthumous albums, only added fuel to the fire. It was as if he had been building a library of material for a future he knew he wouldn't physically inhabit. The conspiracy theory found its footing in a series of bizarre, unverified sightings. A lookalike spotted in New Zealand. A secretive fan who claimed to have met him on a private island. Each grainy photo, each second-hand account, was dissected with the intensity of a holy text. The arguments took on a life of their own. Tupac was too intelligent, too aware to be taken out so easily. He had faked his death to escape the pressures of fame, the dangerous grip of death row records, the endless cycle of violence. He was living in quiet luxury, watching his legend grow, waiting for the right moment to return. But for every believer, there was a skeptic armed with cold, hard facts. The autopsy report, though not fully public, was confirmed by numerous sources. The medical examiner had no reason to lie. The surgeons who operated on him for 6 days described in clinical detail the devastating injuries they tried to repair. These were medical professionals, not actors in some elaborate play. The funeral, a private affair attended by grieving family and close friends, was very real. The pain on his mother Afeni's face was not a performance. It was a portrait of utter devastation. The skeptics argued that parsing his lyrics for clues was a classic case of apophenia, the human tendency to find patterns and meaning in random data. Of course, his music was dark and preoccupied with mortality. He had already been shot once before. He lived a life surrounded by violence. It was all he knew to write about. The I Ain't Mad at Cha video with a tragic coincidence, timing that felt supernatural precisely because it was so random, so cruel. The debate raged, creating a schism in his fan base. One side saw a brilliant escape artist. The other saw a tragic martyr. Both sides loved the man, but they inhabited entirely different realities. The mystery was no longer just about who pulled the trigger. It had morphed into something larger, more philosophical. It became a question about the nature of truth itself, about our desire for narratives that are more satisfying than the messy, unresolved truth. We would rather believe in an elaborate hoax than accept that a genius could be erased by a random act of street violence. The hoax theory wasn't just a claim. It was a coping mechanism. The years rolled on. The world kept turning. But the mystery of Tupac's death only deepened, calcifying into a modern American folklore. The investigation didn't just go cold. It seemed to actively freeze over, encased in a layer of fear, corruption, and lost opportunities. Then a crack in the ice. In 2002, Los Angeles Times reporter Chuck Phillips published a bombshell investigation. It pointed the finger squarely at Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, a South Side Crip from Compton. The motive? Revenge. The altercation in the MGM Grand lobby after the Tyson fight, captured on grainy security footage, showed Tupac and Suge's entourage viciously beating Anderson. He had allegedly stolen a death row chain months earlier. This was payback. According to Phillips, Anderson and his Crip associates had later trailed the BMW, seeking their own retaliation. Anderson, when questioned by police, had an alibi. He was never charged. He was murdered in an unrelated gang shooting in 1998, taking his secrets, if he had any, to the grave. But even this seemingly solid lead began to crumble under scrutiny. Other journalists and investigators poked holes in the timeline. Witnesses recanted or were deemed unreliable. The story was a tapestry of hearsay and street gossip, impossible to verify. It felt less like a solution and more like another layer of the mystery. If it was a simple case of gang retaliation, why the utter silence? Why the complete lack of forensic evidence? The questions multiplied. The case took another bizarre turn in 2011. A former gang member named Dexter Isaac confessed to the 1994 Quad Studios shooting of Tupac in New York, implicating Sean Puffy Combs and a late James Jimmy Henchman, Rosemond as the orchestrators. This confession reignited the old East Coast-West Coast feud, suggesting the vendetta that started in New York may have culminated in Las Vegas. It was a tantalizing thread, but one that led back into the same labyrinth of dead ends and unprovable claims. The most shocking development came from within the system itself. In 2018, the retired captain of the Las Vegas Police Department's Homicide Division, who had overseen the case, made a stunning declaration. He stated he knew who killed Tupac Shakur. He named names, but he claimed, without a credible witness or a murder weapon, without someone willing to break the code of silence, an arrest was impossible. It was a confession of institutional failure. The police knew, but they could not prove. The truth was trapped behind a wall of fear, a wall that had stood for over 2 decades. This admission was a gift to the hoax theorists. It was proof the system was broken, that the official story was a lie. If the police couldn't solve it, maybe it was because there was nothing to solve. Maybe the lack of progress wasn't due to incompetence, but to the fact that the entire event was a meticulously staged illusion. The theories evolved, growing more elaborate. They pointed to Tupac's tattoos, the numerology in his album releases, the cryptic messages from his friends and associates. Every coincidence was a clue. Every inconsistency was a smoking gun. The debate had moved far beyond a simple whodunit. It was now a cultural Rorschach test. What you believed about Tupac's death said more about you than it did about the facts. Did you believe in the cold, random brutality of the streets? Or did you believe in the genius of a man who orchestrated the ultimate performance art? A man who conquered mortality by becoming a myth? There was no middle ground. You either saw a corpse or a ghost. The legacy of Tupac Shakur did not fade. It exploded. He became more powerful in death than he could ever have been in life. His image was etched not on tombstones, but on t-shirts, murals, and album covers. His music continued to sell millions. He became a symbol, an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. The unsolved nature of his murder was the engine of this immortality. The mystery was the myth. To solve it would be to kill the legend, to reduce a cosmic force of nature to a simple, sordid crime statistic. The world, in a strange way, seemed to need the mystery to remain. The desert sun beats down on the Las Vegas Strip, bleaching the color from everything it touches. But some shadows never fade. They grow longer, deeper, more complex with time. The case of Tupac Shakur's murder is one such shadow. It is a story with a beginning and a middle, but no end. Only echoes. The immediate fallout was a seismic shock to the culture. The East Coast-West Coast War, already a tinderbox, was now drenched in gasoline. The notorious B.I.G., Tupac's chief rival, was murdered in an eerily similar drive-by shooting in Los Angeles just 6 months later. The cycle of vengeance was complete, leaving 2 of music's greatest talents dead in its wake. The music industry recoiled, the glamour of the gangsta rap era stripped away to reveal the brutal, bloody reality festering beneath. Suge Knight's empire, Death Row Records, built on intimidation and brilliance, began to crumble without its brightest star, eventually collapsing under the weight of its own corruption and Knight's own legal troubles. But the true fallout was more profound than industry shifts. It was a loss of faith. A generation that looked to Tupac for raw, unfiltered truth was left with the ultimate lie, an unanswered question. The failure of the Las Vegas Police Department became a symbol of a wider failure. A justice system that could not, or would not, protect a black man, even one of immense wealth and fame. The silence of witnesses wasn't just seen as street code. It was viewed as a rational response to a system that had never offered them protection either. The vacuum of justice created a phantom limb of doubt that ached long after the physical wounds of the event had healed. This is where the mystery truly lives, not in the evidence room, but in the human heart. We are pattern-seeking creatures. We crave narrative. A random, senseless death at the hands of a minor gang member over a stolen chain is a pathetic, unsatisfying end for a figure of Shakespearean tragedy. We reject it. We demand a plot worthy of the protagonist. So we built one. The hoax theory is not a dismissal of Tupac. It is the ultimate tribute. It is a refusal to accept that his light could be extinguished by something so mundane as a bullet. It is a belief in his genius so absolute that we credit him with orchestrating the most audacious disappearance in history. We look for his face in a crowd. We scan his old lyrics for new clues. We keep him alive through the very act of searching. To believe he is dead is to accept a world without him. To believe he is out there, watching, is to sustain the hope that his voice might one day return to guide us. The facts, as they stand, are bleak. The medical evidence is overwhelming. The grief of his family and friends is palpably real. The likelihood of a hoax of that magnitude, involving dozens of complicit doctors, nurses, police officers, and morticians, surviving for nearly 3 decades without a single definitive leak, stretches credulity to its breaking point. Yet, the questions remain. They nag. They haunt. Why no arrests? Why the lost evidence? Why the persistent rumors from those who claim to know more? The official story feels like a book with the final chapter ripped out. We are left to write it ourselves. And so we are left in the dim light between what we can prove and what we feel in our bones. Between the cold case file and the hot, burning legend. Between the man who died in a Las Vegas hospital and the immortal icon who lives on in every verse, every mural, every question asked in a hushed tone. The story of Tupac Shakur's death is no longer about forensics or ballistics. It is about the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of a world that often makes no sense. It is about the enduring power of a voice that refused to be silenced. The mystery is the monument. And perhaps that was the point all along.